111 NCAA tournament wins since 2015. 9 Final Fours. The last 3 seasons, you've been there at college basketball's biggest stage, and it just feels like the momentum is in place right now in this league for more to come. What's your mindset on ACC men's basketball right now?
John, it sounds like you were listening to my opening comments yesterday at the Commissioners Forum, because you're exactly right. And Terrence is a former player of ours. The league is really good. It just is. And we've gone through these last 3 years, and whatever the narrative has been, it has been. There's nothing we can do about it. We've had 15 bids in the last 3 years, but we're 33-15 during that time, right? We've had 4 different schools go to the last 3 Final Fours. We spent a lot of time in the offseason really peeling this thing backwards, because I've been on the selection committee and on the men's and women's basketball side of it. And so you have to show something different to the committee, because we have now gone multiple years with a below average number of teams. We did that during the springtime, which I was really adamant about. Several working groups, coaches, our ADs. We brought in some of the experts, bracketologists and all the rest of it. Brought in committee members. Bubba Cunningham, who's the AD at North Carolina, is now the chair of the men's basketball committee. And at the end of the day, there were a few things. One is you got to go play some teams, right? Mm-hmm. You guys talk about it all the time. You have to go play and challenge yourself in the non-conference. Second is you got to win those games.
Right.
And whether you like
that
it or
helps.
not, some of the narrative in November and December ends up sticking to you. But what we did find out, too, is we've had a drag at the bottom of the league, quite frankly.
100%.
Right?
We talked about
you guys have talked about it.
You
Right?
can't have
everybody
a team do
down.
what Louisville did. Not a program that's that good and was so bad.
I think
that'll
strictly
drag
from
you
a
down.
metrics perspective, too. I think that's what you're alluding
Right.
to more than anything. The metrics, and they got better in January and February, and they knocked some guys off, and it hurt the league as a result.
No question. Absolutely no question. And then we're going to do a better job, and this is on me. It's all on me at the end of the day. We're going to do a better job with our platforms. We're one of only 3 conferences with a 24/7 network in the ACC network, but then we have a great partner in ESPN, and so we got to use those platforms.
Sure.
Right? Get Up, First Take, Sports Center. Anytime we can get populated into Monday night or Thursday night, and whenever they're doing their shows. So this is a full court press, to use a real, good basketball analogy about this league. The last thing is, because we've had 4 different teams in the Final Four in the last 3 years, the narrative of if Duke and Carolina are good, the league's good,
Mm-hmm.
and if maybe Duke and Carolina aren't as good, maybe the league's not. We have to shake that a little bit. But I do see that Duke and Carolina projected are good, so that'll be good for the league.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the Louisvilles, the Syracuses. When the league's great, those are the teams. I mean, we know Virginia's going to be good every year. Duke, Carolina, generally good. But like Louisville, Syracuse, those are 2 that I think are on the upswing again. I mean, I've been around Pat Kelsey a bunch the last couple of years. The energy he brings. Red Autry, we just sat down with him. He's going to get that program closer to what it used to be. All right, my big question for you. Expansion of the tournament. I've called out Sankey. I don't want it to expand. It's the only thing that the NCAA does well and does right. Why are we going to screw around with this, Jim? Keep it. I understand everybody wants more bids, coaches. They'd have 128 teams if they could for job stability. I understand that. And, I've actually gotten to the point where I'm almost okay where if you told me, hey, let's do a play-in round of, high major versus mid for the final 8 spots with them playing each other, because that's always the argument at the end of the day, right? Like Indiana State versus the 8th place team in the Big 12 or something like that. Go ahead, try to convince me why we should expand the tournament.
Yeah, I want to just say something on your last point before the question, and that is your basketball brands need to really be good as well, to your point. The history and tradition of those 2 programs in particular, we have several of them, Louisville, Syracuse, that helps the narrative as well. And they know that, and it's just like in football. You have certain brands that you really expect to help push the league forward. As far as the tournament goes, I have not made a commitment about, hey, we absolutely need to expand or we don't. What I've said to Danny Gavitt and the folks that have asked me is, if we're going to expand, it should be like at an incremental level.
Agreed.
Otherwise, just leave it be. So when I'm talking about incremental, maybe 4 more, right? But not massive. I'm just not in that place. I agree with you relative to we have a really good thing.
Why even go 4 then? Why even go 4?
We got to get new mic flags if we do.
Yeah, that's new branding opportunity. Because I do think we owe it to the championship, like we've done with all championships, to review it.
Okay.
Like we were at 4 with football, made sense. Everybody loves the idea of 12 now. They really do, and we've done that, Jeff. I mean, we went from 48 and all the rest of it, and even smaller before that. And that's the work that the committee is doing. And my thing on any of those kinds of processes, I don't want a predetermined outcome. I don't like that where you already have made a decision, and so you kind of sway the process and the information you get to finish at that place. So.
You look at some of the additions to the league, SMU, Stanford, Cal. Stanford, Cal in particular, institutionally really fit the conference well, not just for basketball, but all varsity sports. Logistically, could be a little bit of an issue, but the ACC's found ways to mitigate some of those problems by putting them during Christmas break and some of those things. How have you been able to kind of understand what these institutions need to be able to make this work on a grander scale?
Yeah, Terrence, and having played in the league, you understand it, and that's where college athletics is right now. We used to be regionally based conferences. Now, we're across the country. So that being said, we look closely at it prior to inviting Stanford, Cal, and SMU in there. For the sport of basketball, the travel partners is what we're committed to.
Sure.
And I think that's going to be really good. Cal and Stanford will come over this in the eastern direction 4 times, but they'll get 2 games every time they come. They'll go play Virginia Tech. They'll Duke, Carolina, Miami, Florida State, wherever that rotation is.
Sure.
And then when the legacy schools go in the other direction, they'll do the same thing. They'll head out west and get a 2-for-1. I don't know that we'll have it perfected. I think we'll learn a lot after we get through the first year. I really want to talk to student athletes about their travel and the rest of it. We're seeing a little early snippet, guys, from some of our Olympic sports, like for a volleyball or for a soccer, that are doing that right now. And so far, it's really worked. In the end, it's a great those are 2 great markets for us to be in.
Absolutely.
They played great basketball, in Northern California, great recruiting base, obviously the state of Texas. And I think we'll create some new rivalries with those 3 particular schools. But I'm excited about it. I think they'll add value. Each of those programs are at a different place, right? All relatively new coaches to their places, but coaches that have performed at other places. They just have, right?
How are you working with, in an era where we now see NIL being legal and you see the portal opening and guys being able to transfer immediately and multiple times, how are you working with some of the programs to try to protect the student athletes? The market is different than it is in professional sports. Sometimes the contract language is a little bit different. How are you working with these teams and these programs to try to make sure that some of these kids aren't getting taken advantage of?
Rob, it's part of the reason why we need a national standard, because I think they are. We saw, and I'm not picking on one side or the other, but we saw the UNLV situation, which really bubbled up right in the middle of the season, a ranked team with the quarterback. Those kids need protection, but the departments need protection as well.
Absolutely.
Right? And so
it goes both ways.
It does go both ways. So working with our athletic directors and our presidents, and then for me, working with our other commissioners of trying to get to that place. I have 2 of my 5 kids that are student athletes. One just graduated. The other one is a student athlete now. So I live it a little bit at home, not to the football, basketball level, because they both are Olympic sports student athletes, but I see they have a few opportunities to do some things, and at a low level, but it still really matters. But a standardized national letter or name, image, and likeness structure has been we've been howling for it for a while. Unfortunately, when you leave it in the hands of the government and elected officials, it just gets muddied, and
Nothing moves quickly with the
government. I
government.
know, and in the times we're at right now, it's a slog right now. But it's a really good question, and one that has to be addressed, and it has to work both ways.
Sure.
There's never been more freedom of movement for student athletes than there is now. That's hard on coaches, like really hard. You're in all our coaches. That's hard. Not knowing your roster. I mean, we talked about Louisville. They don't have a returning player.
I don't think they have a returning manager. He got rid of everybody.
Right? And that you guys talk to coaches all the time. You the four of you are invested in college hoops as much as anybody. That can't continue forever. It just can't.
Hopefully not.
And I think, what I think, Jeff, is we thought maybe it would happen through legislative, right? And through your residency, maybe one-time transfer. We're finding all kind of loopholes on that.
Yep.
But you start to have structure on a contractual agreement with a name, image, and likeness opportunity at a university, and you're paying taxes on it, and it's coming, you know, through direct or indirect. We haven't figured that out yet from a university. You're not going to be bouncing around because you have now committed yourself
have a contract.
to
It's written on
absolutely
paper.
right,
Yes.
right, and that's what we're going to have to do.
Jim, you think about the NCAA tournament and the magic that America loves is when a St. Peter's or an Oakland or the little man pulls something off. But by the same token, not at all a little man, an NC State comes out of nowhere and wins your conference tournament and then goes on a Final Four run that nobody saw coming. The tournament brings the unexpected that a casual sports fan loves. How do you balance when you're in the room with every other commissioner talking about the state of this sport that we all are invested in and love, making sure your 18, your family, gets taken care of the very best while also preserving a slice of Americana that is the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, it's a really delicate balance because there's such fierce competition for those spots, and it's in all sports. It's all sports. I remember, 2 years ago, the last team in, and there was kind of conflict about who the last team in the College Baseball World Series that got in ended up being Ole Miss, and they won it all. They won it all.
Yeah.
We ended up being the first team out, right? So there's severe consequences for being above the cut line and below the cut line. That's part of what you're asking, John. Jeff described well, and that is there's a beauty in the tournament like no other, right? There just isn't.
Don't screw it up. That's all.
It is as magical of a sporting event as there is.
Yes.
And I love football, and I think the 12-team college football playoff is going to be great and all that. But it's hard for anyone to say that college basketball and the NCAA tournament, both on the men's side and the women's side, isn't as good of a championship as has ever been drawn up.
Yep. I have one more quick one for you here. Can we get the formula? And I'm not even a numbers guy, but can we get the formula for the net?
Yes.
Like, how have
I want you guys to keep talking about that.
I'm
because
so not an analytics guy, but I
know.
don't understand how that isn't out there and why they haven't capped the efficiency numbers.
I agree,
So now you've got
Jeff,
teams scheduling to be able to blow out other teams. They won't play their walk-ons. It's awful. Like,
know.
this makes no sense.
It reminds me
I
of
think-
the BCS so many years ago when Miami would beat teams 90-7,
Yeah.
and they would get points for that. It's the
I thi-
craziest thing ever.
I think you were in our meetings this spring because we were
you guys talking about that
we
too?
were just like wringing our hands like, do you want us to play bad teams and win by 50? Is that what you're asking?
That's what the
And
Big
then not
12
gonna-
did.
That's right.
That's what the Big 12 teams did, and it worked out for them. So now I talked to Steve Forbes in the offseason, and he was like, should I be doing that? And it's hard to tell him. Listen, for the sport, we need them to play good teams. We want big boy matchups. But for them, especially guys that need to win, I understand it. Go play, teams in the 300s and beat them by 100.
I would love to see him breaking down the formula for the net. That's what I want. All
I'll tell
right.
you what, hey,
That's,
hey,
that's how it
Get me
be
on the next
formula.
podcast.
That's what you. Yes, I said.
All I know is, listen, we really appreciate you having us here.
Yep.
It's been awesome. I mean, really, really good. Now, I can't wait. You just bounced Ben Burnham out. Ben Burnham from Virginia Tech, who transferred from Charleston. No offense to you, but Ben Burnham's one of the funniest dudes, without trying to be funny, you've ever seen in your entire life. So I can't wait to get Burnham up here soon. But really, we mean it. We appreciate it. Love this league. Love the coaches you guys have, the players. You know what this does? This, all off season we complain, because it's the portal, it's a changing rosters, it's kids making $2 million, which I'm all for kids getting paid, but $2 million might be a little bit hefty for some of these kids. But when you get here and you start to talk to the players and you start to talk to the coaches again, you feel good about college basketball again. You
Well
do.
said.